Well, Steve, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. So for our listeners and others, could you just give us a little bit of your background, a little bit about you, where you come from,
Sure.
A little bit about your career up to this point?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm just south of Des Moines in Warren County. My dad and brother and mom farmed together down there, and I was the youngest child, and always had an entrepreneurial itch. My grandfather ran the Ford New Holland dealership in Indianola in Warren County as well, and then my folks were seed dealers as well. So anyhow, grew up in agriculture and went to the University of Northern Iowa. Graduated in 2003 from UNI. Actually got a degree in marketing. Get associated with the real estate program there. A lot. I'm on the advisory program now for the real estate major, and we actually have quite a few real estate and finance students that work in our company today. But I got into real estate right out of college. Always had a passion for real estate, and my real estate professor was actually neighbors with the gentleman that bought People's Company the year I was graduating from college, and so it was a small world deal. My folks farmed some of the managed farms for People's Company, and so I was able to get right into the business and hit the ground running. I got my real estate license while I was in college, and you're about a week on the job. I was out handing out business cards and trying to get my first listing and whatnot. But it was a unique opportunity. People's Company had been around since the 1960s. We'd started out. We were the farm management department of the People's Bank, and we were spun out of the bank in the 1970s during a bank merger. That original People's Bank would be part of our Regions Bank today if we were still part of the bank. But it was ran as kind of a mom and pop real estate company. We had one guy that sold farms and one that managed farms. And so there was a long history there when I got involved, but it was a small mom and pop operation. My first day on the job, we had 4 listings. We had a DOS computer in the office and no website. So I was able to come in behind that long history and be a young entrepreneur and get involved and really at that point start the company as it is today.
Great. And describe the company where it is today.
Yeah, so I've been at this 15 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but as I mentioned, when I got started, we had 4 properties for sale, and we had a small farm management business. Today, People's Company has brokerage licenses in 20 states, and we've acquired a few firms. We just recently announced that we acquired a firm in Walla Walla, Washington. Last year, we acquired a farm management firm out in Elmwood, Illinois. And so we've got 4 main services that we offer. We're in the brokerage and auction business. We've continued our farm management business, although that's taken a twist into more of an asset management, land management style business than the traditional farm management approach. And then about 5 years ago, we started our appraisal business. And then the 4th leg of the stool is our investment business. And there's a lot of investors that are interested in owning farmland. And it's not always popular. We always say farmers only like an investor if it's their own. But what we've done is help allocate farmland investments for investors and do the due diligence and the ongoing management and acquisition of those assets. So we've got about 70 folks in the company today and continue to expand.
So in expansion mode and looking for acquisition opportunities in geographies where it makes sense.
Yeah, we are. And we've got a very retail presence here in Iowa where we do it all. And as we get into some of these other parts of the country where there's not as much activity as there is in Iowa, we might have just a management component or a brokerage component, and we won't have the same style of business in some of those other markets.
Sure. Well, Steve, I've known you now for, 6 or 8 years probably.
Yeah, that's right.
So I can't remember who introduced us, but somebody talked about this guy in Des Moines that had this growing firm and had one of the biggest land investment meetings in the country.
Yeah.
And we met at that point. But so you're busy, you have a growing firm, you have a young family, but you've always taken the time to support entrepreneurs, whether it's them coming to your office to seek advice or supporting our entrepreneurs that are on campus at Iowa State University or in Northern Iowa and your alma mater there, and then support the Ag Startup Engine. So can you talk about why you and some of your friends decided to invest in the Ag Startup Engine?
Yeah, it's interesting watching people go through the same path that I went through and some of the struggles, and I'm starting to become that guy that talks about what you did when you got started and how you screwed up and whatnot, and so I've always had a passion for young people that have taken the risk that I took, and it's amazing how much of an impact folks have had on me through the years that have been willing to mentor and help me out. And so, being able to see some of these companies and have an opportunity to help and invest and really learn what the up and coming things are, it's amazing. You get 2 or 3 years removed from college, and it's amazing how quickly you lose touch of the new trends and whatnot. And so by being a part of this accelerator, you're able to continue to be in front of young people and see the new ideas that are coming, and have an opportunity to invest as well and help shape their companies.
That's great. The Ag Startup Engine is about agricultural technology. Now, agriculture is really big. Ag tech is still pretty big and pretty broad. And even the first 5 companies that we have are a range of different places. But what do you think are some of the most compelling opportunities in agricultural technology, whether it's just what you're interested in personally, what you think is interesting, regardless of what your business is, or things from kind of a people's company perspective that are most interesting?
Yeah, we've tried to pay attention to things that can impact our business. And so, in the farm management business, we think we've just scratched the surface on some of the technology that's coming into the space and how you can get more efficient with farming. And I've made the comment that I think agriculture and farming is one of the last great places of arbitrage in the world, and that even though there's a lot of great farmers and there's a lot of technology, we haven't fully, in my mind, embraced a lot of that technology and figured out how to actually apply it and become better stewards and more profitable and that sort of thing. And
so by arbitrage, you mean bringing technologies that may have been put to work in some other sector and just bringing them in and implementing them in agriculture?
Absolutely. And just, in our management business, one farmer to the next, you'll see just major, I don't know what you'd call it, skill gap or whatnot, but folks that are embracing technology and how that operation performs versus others that don't. And so we've been able to see that routinely when we're collecting yield history and signing leases, and the folks that have embraced technology are in a better position to, in our world, pay higher rents, which necessarily isn't popular, but increase yields and increase profitability and do it in a sustainable manner. So.
How does that issue of sustainability touch all of these things? Does it... certainly from just a thematic thing, it seems like a big deal, but from an actual impact on bottom line and impacting real estate, impacting kind of long-term value of land, how do you see that coming together?
Yeah, sustainability is the new buzzword. It's impacting everything that we do. We spend a lot of time working with investors, and a lot of this investment capital, they want that tied to sustainability practices. There's a big movement in food now, the food to fork movement. People want to know where their food comes from. You see that with blockchain now, tracking from the very beginning of the stages, from that seed being planted to when it's manufactured into whatever you're eating. And so, the consumer is really starting to drive choices. And, when we started to see some of these decisions where California, on the cage-free issue, when you start to realize, gosh, the consumer really does have a voice, and if you aren't paying attention, you could be on the outside looking in. And so we've spent a lot of time in our management business making sure that we're addressing the long-term sustainability, conservation issues. Water quality in Iowa is a big deal, and so it went from being a fad, maybe a buzz thing, maybe something that people in agriculture didn't think applied to them, and I think it's become very much mainstream, and it's on top of mind for a lot of folks.
Sure. We built a lot of systems around commodity production, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all, right? Because we built a really efficient system that delivers consistent quality, very safe food at the end of the day to consumers. But I think some of the issues that you touch on about farm to fork, blockchain, being able to trace things, offers at least an opportunity for niches to develop that didn't exist before. Do you see that becoming an issue?
No, I think it's very exciting, because you're seeing a movement back to some smaller scale farming, and even organics, which are popular amongst some and others not so much. But it's allowing that new entrepreneur that maybe has a smaller scale farming concept to be viable and bring something to the market that the consumer wants. So, I'm a huge fan of production agriculture, and that drives our business. But it's exciting to see some of these things. And we took a tour of the Nebulum facility the other day, and this indoor farming concept. It's mind-blowing, frankly, to see what that looks like and what that can mean for traditional agriculture when you can produce crops year-round, indoors in a controlled environment without weather risk. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you take the things that I suppose we've taken for granted that we have in a place like Iowa of soil, sun, water, rain, and you begin to replace parts of that with technology.
For sure, and it's exciting and it's scary at the same time, and that's where if you're not embracing and at least learning about some of those technologies, again, my fear for people that aren't paying attention to the ag tech space is that you could be on the outside looking in because things are changing quickly. Yeah.
What do you think some of the challenges are for agricultural technology, whether it's some of the businesses that you've watched or just the entrepreneurs? And maybe it's the same lesson that you learned in building people's company and other entrepreneurs have built. But do you think there are any challenges particular to ag tech?
I think so. I think the very nature of ag tech or technology, let's say, it's very driven by West Coast, San Francisco, Silicon Valley based entrepreneurs where they don't have the same business philosophies necessarily in all cases that we have in the Midwest, where we want to see it work before we go to the next level. And so some of the ag tech startups that I've seen, it's pedal to the metal because that's what their investors expect, and it's grow, and you've got to hit the home run or you're not exciting to them or interesting to them. So I think that's, some of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with in ag tech, they've struggled to adapt to that philosophy of we've got to hit a home run here, or this isn't something we're interested in.
Do you think there's a good middle America or Iowa approach?
I think so, and unfortunately, in the current cycle we're in the commodity markets, it's harder for farmers and Iowa entrepreneurs to invest in these startups. But there's a lot of capital here in the Midwest that gets what ag tech could mean, and I think if you can slow down and get the type of capital that you want in these businesses, you can build businesses that are sustainable for the long haul and not necessarily that Silicon Valley approach.
Yeah, land investors obviously a whole lot better than I do, but I know with farmers at least is one class of investors. People will say in times maybe when prices are better and there's profits, they're going to always put it back into land.
For sure.
Do you think that's always the case, or do potentially investments in startups if it's something that makes a difference to them, or maybe it's something that's local or whatever? Do you think that becomes part of the portfolio potentially?
I think so, and we've seen it. And it started with the ethanol plants when farmers started investing in those plants, and I think there's some very sophisticated large farmers now that want to diversify and understand that they need to diversify, and they want exposed to this stuff as well. So I think there's a lot of wealth right here in the Midwest that we haven't really frankly capitalized yet on these investments.
Oh, great. Well, you talk about the importance of mentoring and that you've had mentors and that now you're in a position to be a mentor. When you think about some of the high impact entrepreneurial people that you've met or that you've worked with, what are some common characteristics or skills or behaviors as you think about that? Maybe skills and behaviors that you've tried to emulate in the past, or if you're like me, you're still trying to get better at, right, and improve on.
Yeah, what I found, some of the most successful people are always willing to listen and always willing to sit down with you and give advice and an open door policy. And frankly, some of the folks that were willing to help me out early on, you were kind of shocked that they'd take the meeting, and you were shocked that they'd give you time. And when you sit down, they're very interested in you and what you have to say. And I think that's what I've learned from some of these really successful people is that they're always learning. They always want to know what you know, and they're not telling you how the world works. They want to learn from you, and these are people that have exceeded success at anybody's wildest expectation, and so I've tried to be willing to help young people out and lend an ear to them and be willing to give advice, and every time I do that, I learn more from them than I'm sure they learn from me.
That's great. What are some of the most important business lessons that you've learned? And so I'm thinking of kind of the blocking and tackling of, whether it's about managing financials or about marketing or about people.
Yeah, probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is that, frankly, business it's really easier than I thought it would be to be successful, but the hardest part is being patient and slowing yourself down sometimes and waiting on things to work out. I've really struggled with that, and you start an idea and you give up on it, and then you move on to the next one, and then 6 months later that initial idea starts to work, and then you're trying to juggle the new idea and the old idea. And I wish I would have been more patient and let some of these things materialize, because they inevitably do. And you got to believe in the process and believe in these concepts as you roll them out and give them time to work. And
so the old adage of twice as long and twice as much money, maybe, to get something to success.
That's exactly right. And then I would say that the single greatest challenge that we have is people, and finding high quality people that have similar values and buy into the culture and the vision of the company. I completely underestimated how hard that was. It's easy to come up with great business ideas and marketing campaigns and whatnot and neat websites, but finding good people to execute on those strategies, that continues to be the biggest challenge.
I think you've done a really good job starting to reach back into universities and identifying talent.
we have, and that was something, I got into a business that was dominated by folks in their 50s and 60s, and I got into it in my early 20s, and through the years we've found that it's easier to recruit young people and teach them the business how we want to teach them the business than go and recruit people from other firms and try to make them adapt to our philosophies. So.
Well, and you don't raid your competitors either.
That's right. That's right.
When you think about meaningful insights that you've gathered, whether it's about business or being an entrepreneur or maybe even personal insights, things that you've learned, what are some of the sources of those? You've talked about people, so maybe you think of a person in particular, but books, conferences that you go to, some kind, is there anything that sticks out, Steve, as being a way that you gather insights that are helpful, practical, doable for you?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time reading. You just every weekend I get home with a pile of newspapers and magazines and periodicals and articles that you've gotten on the internet that it takes a long time actually to sort through that stuff. And so that's I spend way too much time on Twitter and social media looking at different articles, but beyond that, we spend a lot of time going to where our clients are instead of trying to get them to come to us. And so we spend a lot of time. I think we participate in over 40 trade shows a year, so we're constantly at continuing education events where our clients might get their continuing ed, or different trade shows where they're going to get information. And so, again, with longevity, you start showing up at these places long enough, and eventually, you build those relationships with people, and again, you learn what they know, and that's been really helpful.
So Mitchell Hora recently told me that he'd met you and was still talking to you, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
With Continue Mag. But I said, how did you meet? Because I try to keep track of these things. And he said, well, last year in the magazine that the Agricultural Entrepreneurship Initiative puts out, you had an article, and Steve read that, and then he just called me. And I'm like, wow, that is cool. But it makes me feel good about actually taking the time to publish that.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first got started, and there would be some articles and magazines and whatnot, and that comes back to some of these really successful entrepreneurs, that would reach out to me and say, hey, I saw your article, and I'm interested in what you're working on, and so I've tried to do the same thing, and these. I don't know what it is, but I certainly don't feel like I was as bright as Mitchell and some of these other kids when I was in college.
I feel the same way.
It's shocking how smart and how motivated and committed these guys are. And so we've invited a lot of them into our staff meetings, and I know a lot of the folks in our office that are successful just look at them and think, God, that kid's smarter than I am. And then they're 21 years old. So it's pretty exciting.
Good. Well, just some...
Switch batteries real quick.
Okay.
Okay. I got this one.
There's my quick fire questions I was going to ask to conclude. Are you okay on time?
Yeah.
Still?
No,
Yep.
I'm doing good.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, Steve, just some quick fire questions. First, what's your earliest memory of agriculture?
I think just riding in the combine and the tractor with my dad, helping farm growing up.
Yeah, those are good memories. What's your memory of the first money that you made?
We had a little sweet corn patch growing up that my brother and I sold sweet corn to the neighbors, and in fact, I think maybe my folks might have paid some neighbors to come buy sweet corn from us just to give us our first, customer.
Your first sales experience.
Yeah.
So you've been selling for a while.
Selling for a long time, and gosh, that turned into pumpkins, and I think I had a little toothpick business while I was in college, and then I sold net wrap and twine when I was in high school, and so I've always been selling.
Good for you. Who've been some of the most influential people in your career? If you can think of some names that you're willing to share.
Yeah, I've got a long list of people that have been influential. Through this Land Investment Expo, I've been able to just meet some really neat people. Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, and of course Donald Trump and Boone Pickens, and Boone Pickens is probably one of the neatest people that I've ever met, and he's been very generous and invited me to come down and watch the Iowa State games in Stillwater at the stadium, and he just turned 90 years old, and he continues to be entrepreneurial to this day, and he's just got a lot of great Texas, Oklahoma wisdom that he's willing to share. And
so what is it you think it attracts somebody like Boone Pickens to come here to Des Moines in January and speak to your group?
I ask all these speakers every time, why did you accept my invitation to come to Iowa in January? and they view Iowa as the epicenter of agriculture, and it is. And they want to come here, and they want to see it, and they want to meet the people that are involved in it. And consistently hear that message out of all these folks.
That's great. This is my last quick-fire question. At the end of the day, agriculture is about ultimately delivering food products to people, hopefully food experiences and food items that are delightful. If you have to think of one favorite meal or favorite food experience, what comes to mind?
I'm a hole-in-the-wall kind of guy. There's nothing better than finding a greasy spoon out on the road, and we spend a lot of time traveling all over in rural, remote areas, and there's a little restaurant down, and it's either Arkansas or Mississippi, called Dos, and you walk in, there's a security guard up front, and it's in this rural community, and you walk in through the kitchen, and they're cooking your steaks in a pizza oven, and you wonder what you're getting yourself into, and then the food comes out, and it's absolutely amazing. And so when you find those types of restaurants, and it's fun. Everybody you talk to that travels down there, they said, "Hey, have you ever been to Dos?" And so, finding those gems, that's what gets me going.
We'll have to start a social media site, maybe the best holes in the wall in rural America or something.
I'd be on that daily.
Great. Well, maybe just a couple of follow-up questions. I think part of what we're trying to do with the Ag Startup Engine, part of what you've been such a constructive part of, Steve, you and your colleagues and your team here is building an ecosystem for agricultural entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurs. And I know most certainly, having started my first company in 1996 here in Central Iowa, I got a lot of help, but I think there's a whole lot deeper bench today, whether it's capital or mentoring or whatever, inspirational young people doing things. There's just a lot more going on. But it seems to me that the Land Expo every January, it brings together 700-800 people that are some of the most significant agricultural investors, from anywhere. What role now do you think the Land Expo kind of plays, in agricultural investment broadly, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, the Land Expo, this was our 11th year of hosting that, and next year we're moving it to a larger venue. We've continued to sell out year after year at that 700 number, and so we're finally taking the leap to move it to a bigger venue, and that's going to give us more opportunity to expand it, maybe do some more things with ag tech and whatnot, because we are, at the end of the day, we're bringing people together, and that's what I love about the Land Expo, is bringing that Wall Street, Boston, New York financier in, and then you see them sitting at a table at the Land Expo talking to an Iowa farmer and watching those relationships form and watching those connections be made and hearing about deals later on that got done because they met at this Land Expo has been really, really exciting for me. And so with that now, the keynote speakers that we brought in, now we've started to develop a little bit of an expectation of what you're going to deliver.
High expectations.
And it's getting harder and harder to top the year before, and so far we've been able to do that. But no, I think, it's interesting having attended a lot of these conferences around the country around ag investment. I go to those conferences, and there's, what I've learned is that money is a commodity. There's unlimited amounts of money out there, and really what the world's short of is good ideas and people that can execute on good ideas. And so when you can have a forum like the Land Expo, and you can bring the people with the money together with the people with the ideas and make those connections and be a part of that, it's really exciting.
Well, that's a great point. How do we do more to bring good people together, and maybe for what we do, at least at the Agricultural Entrepreneurship Initiative at Iowa State, how do we help people generate more good ideas?
Yeah, it's tough. It's the good ideas are out there, but it's getting people exposed to them. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about organizing some sort of road trip, bus trip for clients of ours, because every time I take the time to go and tour some entrepreneur's facility, you just get blown away with what they're doing, and I don't think enough people get exposed to what's happening, and people are busy. And so, when you have those opportunities like the Land Expo where you can do that, we need to do our best to showcase what's already happening, because there are a lot of great things happening already.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you for everything you do, and thanks for taking the time to visit today.
Yeah, and likewise, thank you. It's been an honor to get to know you and participate in what you're doing, and we've got a lot of your students in the company, and they're well trained.
You get new ones. I just met one a little bit ago. All right.